Welcome to the Vilest Rag, a podcast hosted by the Ubyssey UBC student newspaper. I'm Elena Massing, I'm the features editor at the Ubyssey, and I'm your host for today. But I'm very excited for today's episode because we're actually going to be watching the first editor interview we ever filmed. So, surprise, it was all a lie, and these were recorded out of order. So much for transparency, I guess. You'll have to cut me some slack, though, because coordinating recording times with 12 of the busiest people alive it's just been the fight of my life. But it's funny to watch it back now. Our microphones were fresh out of the box, and Saumya and I had spent about 4 hours during one of the nights leading up to it taping all of these newspapers and archival photos that you'll see on the back wall if you're watching the video version of this. And I also had a breakdown about this red chair that I'm sitting in right now, because when I was decorating this room, I heard that the business office had a chair that I could steal. And I didn't think too much of it. I didn't bother to check in advance, but I was shocked the week of recording to learn that it was actually the brightest, reddest, ugliest chair you have ever laid eyes on in your life. So I scoured Facebook Marketplace, and I was like, surely I can find a chair that's better than this one in time to shoot this podcast. I couldn't. I accepted defeat. And the chair has kind of become a part of our branding for this. I think it kind of works. I think the longer we've done this, the more I've started to make peace with it. So this whole podcast endeavor has been interesting for a variety of reasons, but mostly because the editors here do interviews all the time, but we're always asking the questions, we're not answering them. And I guess the main challenge, on my end at least, is doing interviews with people I know about a job that I work myself. So it's kind of trying to strike a balance between covering the basics of what we do here, but then also avoiding getting too into the weeds of the specifics of our work here and journalism more broadly. But we've been having a lot of fun with this project so far, and we really appreciate you taking the time to listen to it. So before we get into my conversation with Julian, and you can see our humble podcast beginnings, let's take a look at what we published in the past week. So in news, Jewish students tried to celebrate Sukkot on McInnes Field, but UBC called the police on them. Editors Spencer Eisen, Stephen Kosar, and Aisha Chaudhry have the story on that, with photos by Saumya Kamra. Senior culture reporter Natalie Vakulin thinks UBC clinical professor emeritus Bill Koch's new mystery novel titled Hired Gun missed the mark. Also in arts and culture, contributor Claire Donnan reviews A Welcome Distraction, a film that feels like a love letter to the city of Vancouver. In sports and recreation, UBC women's soccer has done the impossible, completing their second consecutive perfect regular season, so they are undefeated. And this is the second time in Canada West this century that this has been accomplished, and the only other time was UBC last year. So you can read all of these pieces and more on our website, ubyssey.ca, which is updated daily. In this episode of the Vilest Rag, I have another conversation with a member of our editorial board. This week is Julian Coyle Forst, our arts and culture editor. So he talks to me about what his deserted island album would be. That's a kind of a tongue twister. And what it's like to do arts reporting as someone who has a background in music and the arts more broadly. So you can stay tuned after that to learn about when UBC students backed Mac, explained by columnist Quyen Schroeder. So that's all from me for now, and we'll be back again after a short break. Julian Coyle Forst is the Ubyssey's culture editor, covering all things art and student life. And he's joining me today to talk about the job, what led him to journalism, and what people should know about arts reporting. So thanks for being here, Julian. I'm excited to have you on the podcast. This might not be the first episode we're releasing, but it is the first episode we're recording, which is pretty exciting. Whoa.
Nice. Yeah, I know.
How are you feeling?
Good.
In general.
I've never podcasted before, so...
You know what? Neither have I.
Yeah.
So this will be a learning experience for both of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, before we get into your work at the Ubyssey, let's start with a bit about who you are outside of that. What are you studying, and how long have you been at Ubyssey?
This coming year will be my 4th year at Ubyssey. I'm doing English Lit. And yeah, I've been doing English Lit since like the end of first year, and doing a minor in Law and Society.
Cool. Yeah.
Mhm.
And you're the culture editor here at the newspaper.
I am.
Whoa, didn't know that. What does that mean? Just talk me through some of the things you usually find yourself doing on the job.
Yeah, so basically the culture section covers events and arts is a good way to sort of like an umbrella term. So if a club does some sort of event where students like any event that students could go to, or as long as it's related to Ubyssey in some fashion, where it's within our sort of like wheelhouse of coverage. So some recent ones that we've done have been the MFA, Master of Fine Arts exhibition at the Belkin. That's a pretty standard thing. The Belkin, we cover the Belkin a lot. We also do sort of AMS clubs coverage. That's a lot of what I started out doing at the Ubyssey. Just going to a club meeting, talking to the people involved, the organizers, writing an article about the club, and if people want to get involved, how they can do that and what that would entail. Also, we cover concerts, cultural events. So if, say, the Persian Society does something, has like a Nowruz event or something like that, that could be within the culture section, as long as it's, on campus somewhere related to Ubyssey in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what brought you to the Ubyssey in general, or journalism more broadly?
Yeah. I think for the first real like journalism thing that I did was in high school. I wrote for the school newspaper, like high school newspaper, because my film class teacher told me that was a good way to like practice my writing skills and things like that. So I got involved with that, and then I started doing like film reviews mostly, and then moved out from that a little bit. But that the high school newspaper there wasn't a lot going on in there, so it was kind of just like me and a couple of other people. So whenever we would write something, we would just publish it there. And then when I came to Ubyssey, I basically just sought out the school newspaper because I wanted to keep doing it. And I had, since culture coverage is like what I was doing before, I kind of just kept going with that. And yeah, I wrote for the Ubyssey for a while as a contributor, then staff and senior staff, and then editor this year.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see yourself becoming an editor early on, or was it kind of unexpected for you to end up here?
I think like I didn't go in thinking about that. Towards maybe like the end of my second year, I thought that would be a cool thing to shoot for. And yeah, I ran for features editor last year as well. So I was like sort of going for that then. But yeah, towards the beginning of this year, I definitely wasn't planning on running for editor at the beginning of this year. And then when it came time for elections, I was like, let's try it. And then I did, and it happened. And I'm happy to be here.
I'm glad. It would really suck if you weren't. Yeah. And why culture specifically?
I think that's always just kind of been what I've been interested in high school. My favorite classes were my film class and my English class. I study English Lit still, so those culture in general has been kind of what I've always written about, what I've been interested in reading about, and it kind of just felt like the logical sort of progression of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find there's any sort of misconceptions you find readers have about arts reporting?
I think that a lot of readers think there's a lot more opinion in reviews, at least the kind of reviews that we do. than there necessarily has to be. That's something that a lot of new writers are kind of scared of, writing reviews. They think that they have to either like trash the thing that they're talking about or like say it's like God's gift or something like that. But a lot of the times when I'm writing a review, it's kind of just saying what happened, who organized it, things they're planning for the future, talking to the person who did it if it involves an interview, and giving some opinion if I do have an opinion, but not you don't have to have a strong opinion on everything. So it's a lot of reviews end up kind of being quite descriptive, rather than hugely opinionated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have a favorite event you've ever reviewed?
That's a good question.
Here or somewhere else?
Yeah. I really liked doing Battle of the Bands, the BVP Battle of the Bands. What was it called? Versus. Yeah, Versus was a lot of fun. I covered that this year. And I also wrote like a personal essay type thing for Goose Hunt, which isn't really like coverage specifically, but that was a lot of fun to write. I really liked one of the very early ones that I did was the Occult Club, the Ubyssey Occult Club. That was a lot of fun because I had no idea what was going on with that. I kind of just showed up to the meeting. I didn't know like if they were taking like if it was a view on the occult as just like a point of interest to study, or if it was like a specifically spiritual thing, and it turned out to kind of be both. And it was a lot of fun to like learn about something that I knew about broadly. I know what occultism is and stuff like that, but didn't really know how people at UBC were interfacing with that. And it was cool to meet people who are very like different from myself in terms of like spirituality and things like that. And yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What did you notice? I guess I could go read the piece, but
about the Occult Club. Yeah, I don't remember like the angle I took on it, but like what I noticed was that there was a very broad spectrum in terms of sort of like belief in the occult. Like I remember the person who was running it. I don't think they go to UBC anymore, but they I spoke with them a little bit afterwards, and they were very sort of full of faith. Maybe I wouldn't say faithful, but full of faith. You know, of in that kind of thing, like divination, manifestation, like that kind of thing. But they're like second kind of like they're the first mate or whatever, the second in command of the Occult Club was not so much spiritual, more interested in it as sort of like a literary kind of study, I guess, just sort of the study of like folklore and things like that. And then among the people that were there, I think there were like 6 or 7 other people. It kind of ran the spectrum, and we all went around first and talked about like why we were at the club and what we wanted to like look into. And it was cool hearing. One thing that was cool was people were interested, like since basically everything at UBC is going to be a multicultural event. There were people that came to talk about like occult folklore and stuff like that from like a bunch of different cultures. So that was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think. I was culture editor for 2 years mm-hmm. before you took over, and I think one of your biggest strengths is you're able to go to some pretty random ass things and get an interesting piece out of them. Yeah. I really like the Cry Club piece mm-hmm. you wrote.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
And Wreck Beach was fun. Mm-hmm. Also P-Man.
Yeah.
But I know you've sort of been trying to also branch out and away from sort of not the sillier stuff, but some different kinds of writing. So mm-hmm. yeah, I think you've grown a lot, and it's been very awesome to see. But what are some misconceptions that maybe the artists and publicists you work with have about journalism and how it works, and how is that sort of a challenging part of the job, if it is?
Yeah, well, so one thing that we're sort of working on, like as a whole with the Ubyssey this year, is sort of getting more of a like in-depth understanding of journalism ethics and practice, and that kind of like highlights how not necessarily lacking, because lacking implies that it should be there, but like the extent to which many people who aren't involved with journalism are unaware of that kind of thing, and like that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like most people don't need to be knowledgeable about that kind of thing. It's not their job. It's not their area of expertise. But some things that like kind of frequently happen are, I mean, on I would say like a quarter of interviews or like pieces that I do where I have to speak with a source, the source will ask me to send them the draft of the piece before it's released. That happens pretty often. And that's something that can be kind of challenging because we can't do that. It kind of compromises our ability to have sort of journalistic independence if we show the piece to the source before it's released, because then they could say, I don't like this, why did you do this way? And sort of that can compromise the independence of our sort of perspective. But some people don't understand that, so it's important for us to sort of walk them through why that is, and give them alternatives. Like sometimes we will send them the transcript of the interview that we do or things like that. But other than that, that's probably the main thing. Other than that, I think people have a pretty good understanding of the kind of pieces that we'll be doing, you know, whether they've read reviews from other publications or read stuff from Culture before. I think most people tend to pretty well understand what we're going for in terms of angle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you have some favorite arts, music, performance-related publications that you sort of turn to for inspiration or just for fun to read?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of the Lincoln Center releases a lot of good articles on films. I like those ones. I also really like the Vanity Fair YouTube channel where they where an actor will go through, or a director will go through like their filmography and sort of point out what they were doing at a specific point. I mean, Exclaim is a big one. Discorder, I love Discorder. They, for people who don't know, they're the magazine of CITR, the local like university radio station. They cover a lot of local artists, and I'm especially blown away by their sort of production values. The art is always so sick, and yeah, they always put together such great print issues, which is awesome. Other than that, I mean, Georgia Strait, sometimes I'll pick it up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And just on the Discorder music vibe, mm-hmm. Even though you've never invited me to watch one of your open mics, not that I'm bitter about it or anything, I know you write and you play music yourself, mm-hmm. and I'm curious about what that's like and if that sort of influences the way you write about art.
That's interesting. Well, the extent of my like music production in my like myself is writing songs on guitar and then buying like a microphone and then having a tangle of wires all across my living room trying to like mic the amp, and then or like trying to get it close enough to like an acoustic guitar or something like that.
It's kind of what this room looks like right
now. Kind of, yeah. Yeah, and then making like kind of like amateurish recordings, and then kind of starting over again. So I would say that I'm not a big recorder, but I do really like to write songs. So
EP when?
Sorry?
EP?
Yeah. No, nothing in the works. But yeah, but in terms of how that influences, I mean, honestly, the main way that it influences my sort of coverage is just to give me a huge respect and awe of the kind of things that people can do, and just in general, like whether it's organizing an event, organizing like a club meeting, or like putting out an album, making a film, like seeing that kind of stuff, especially within like your own community, is is always awesome, but when you know how hard that kind of thing is and how much effort goes into it and how much care, it becomes like it goes onto a whole nother level. So that's definitely I think that's definitely something that like will heighten your appreciation of the things around you to sort of like get involved in trying to do those things yourself. It's a really nice thing.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you need that experience of being an artist to write about art well, or can anyone do it?
Yeah, I definitely don't think you need that. It gives you a lens, you know. It's the same with having expertise in a subject. Like if you're going to review, say, opera, you don't necessarily like if you have a lot of knowledge about opera, you can have a big repository of knowledge that you can draw on throughout your review and say, this person in this production was doing this, which reminded me of this other time that this person did this, and that can be really helpful and can really elevate your review. At the same time, though, if you go to an event and you just say, this is what happened, this is how it made me feel, this is what I thought of this, that's like a completely valid way to start. I would say that once you have gotten your start in that regard, you will find yourself becoming more, you'll find yourself falling into a sort of like layman's expertise, because if you do it a lot, you just naturally build up a skill of reviewing and naturally build up vague familiarity with a bunch of subjects if you're reviewing those subjects frequently. So I would say that that kind of experience and expertise in the specific field isn't necessary for the start, but if you do have it and if you develop it, it really elevates your writing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there any sort of advice or words of wisdom you'd give to someone looking to sort of get into arts reporting if they haven't before?
Yeah. I would say the main thing to do is take notes when, like, especially if it's at something that isn't being recorded or something that can't be seen again. Like if you're going to a play, I mean, you can see a play again, but it won't be the same play. You know, it might be the same production, but it won't be the same performance. Or if you're going to like a live show or something like that, it's really important to take notes and look through them when you get back, because it's not necessarily about the things that you write in the notes. It's what the notes are going to sort of trigger in your brain in terms of memory. So when you get back, you might not remember the person's name, but if you wrote down their first name in your notes, you just jotted it down because you heard it from someone announced it over the PA. That can like trigger your memory, and then that can trigger other memories that really help you to sort of paint a better picture of what it's really like to be there, because in the end, that's kind of, for a lot of the pieces that we do, that's the main goal, to communicate the experience of being at the event so that people can understand what it was like and know what events like it might be like in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What's your writing pet peeve? What's something, if you get a draft in and you see a line, what's the thing that always makes you just cringe? Not that it doesn't work for...
Okay. I don't like from d to d, from blank to blank, like, or, and a lot of the things that I don't like in writing, I don't like them because I used to do them. So don't go looking in the archives. But outside of that, yeah, another thing that I used to do is overly stylistic prose in a situation when it's not really necessary. That's something that can be tempting, especially with culture writing, because you're writing, a lot of the times you'll be writing about something that is stylistic and that is evocative, and you want to do that yourself. But a lot of the time what the piece is going to call for is not that. It can be nice to have a little a stylistic kind of intro or a framework, but Mainly the place for that is personal essays a lot of the time, and that kind of thing is like what makes personal essays special. So I think that that's something that I mean, just something to avoid, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think is one of the most effective things that someone can include in their writing? What's something you like seeing?
I really like it when they, when contributors will make effective use of quotes and integrate the quotes like really well. I think that's a strength that a lot of people learn from academic writing, because professors will drill it into you to quote sources in a flowing and elegant way, and I think that that's a really important piece of journalistic writing as well, as being able to not only include the quotes well, but know what quotes are going to be relevant and going to elevate your story. So when someone can really pull what they need out of an interview and surround it with relevant information in a way that makes it feel completely natural is perfect. I love to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And since you're our resident art expert, I have a few last rapid fire, vaguely art related questions for you. Which one album would you take with you if you ended up on a desert island?
I think it would have to be The Glow Part 2. I think I could get the most out of that one. In terms of like, I guess there's like the strategic route of like picking something really, really long. maybe like the Magnetic Field 69 Love Songs, like that album's like 4 hours long or something. Probably not, like 2 hours or something. But yeah, maybe something like that. Yeah, but in terms of like, if I can only listen to one thing ever again, I think it would be The Glow Part 2.
That's a good choice.
Yeah.
What's your most controversial art take?
Controversial. Okay. One that is burned in my mind, because it was okay. So when I was like 13 or 14, maybe like getting into movies for the first time, my grandfather, whose opinion I really respect, and did back then even more so. I mean, maybe not more so, but in a different way, in the sort of childish way that you respect adults' opinions. He showed me one of his favorite movies, which is A History of Violence. I forget who directed it, but it's got Viggo Mortensen in it. And he said that it was like a literary masterpiece, and that's why I was like really ready to love this movie, and then it turned out to be like this schlocky John Wick like nonsense that I really didn't like. It's about this like family man who has a dark past, and you don't really know what it is, but eventually this guy shows up in his town and attacks his family, and then he has to like get revenge, and it has a kind of trite self-obsession. I think that it thinks it's saying a lot more than it is. I don't know if that's controversial. I don't know how people feel about that movie in general, but I didn't like it.
Not controversial, just an opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not art related at all, but I just put it here. If you could swap lives with another editor for a day, who would it be and what would you do? It can be a position or a specific person.
I'd be interested to see, like, I think it would be a train wreck, but I'd be interested to see what would happen if I switched lives with Spencer for a day, just because, like, I don't think that I could, like, I think our lives work in very different ways. Like I think his regimented schedule would kind of throw me off, and I would miss a bunch of appointments, and like after we switched back, his life would be in shambles.
Every week, Spencer asked me to gym at like 7:30 in the morning, and I'm like, oh my god, I can't do it. I can't do it. Yeah, for those that don't know, Spencer is our opinion editor and deputy managing editor. You'll meet him at some point during
Maybe
this
you
series.
already have.
Maybe you already have. We haven't decided on an order yet, but we will soon. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. That was
My
Julian
pleasure.
Coyle Forst, the Ubyssey's culture editor. He's still here. He's laughing.
Yes,
This
it
is
is Julian.
it
I'm not
is
dead
Julian
yet.
Coyle Forst. You can join me in the next episode to learn about some other member of the editorial team. Don't know who yet, but you'll know. And learn more about student journalism more broadly at Ubyssey. And coming up in a few seconds, we'll be diving into a moment in Ubyssey's history with Quyen Schroeder.
It's 1963. John F. Kennedy dies in the hospital I was born in. Doctor Who premieres its first episode, and the Toronto Maple Leafs beat out the Detroit Red Wings, winning their 11th Stanley Cup. In January of that year, UBC President John MacDonald presents a report saying that higher education needs more funding. Which, you know, when don't they say that? I skimmed that entire 130-page report, and in it he argued for the necessity of institutions like UBC, and presented a theory for its place among other educational institutions like high schools, vocational schools, and two-year colleges. He also analyzed peer universities. He also proposed regions of BC that would benefit from having higher education institutions. He projected the needs of UBC into the future. He outlined why every stakeholder, from the provincial government to labor groups, would benefit from funding higher education. The province, seeing the publication of this report, didn't do that. They provided only $1 million of the $2.6 million increase in funding that he had requested, which was, you know, bad. Some Ubyssey editorials at the time listed concerns about rising tuition, limited admission, and larger classes with fewer professors. And to confront this lack of funding, the AMS and student organizers organized a campaign called Back Mac. Its supporters were called Backmackers. They made I Back Mac pins. It was a great vibe as they supported the UBC president's ask of the province. At first, John MacDonald didn't publicly support this campaign. At the time, the Board of Governors was actively in discussion with the province, so a lot of that was necessarily private. At the same time, the Faculty Association urged faculty to do everything possible to support student participation in the Back Mac campaign. Though slow, John MacDonald eventually came to publicly support the campaign. His first sign of tangible support for the campaign was wearing an I Back Mac pin, though he did eventually remove it for photos. Then, later, he gave a speech at the AMS's annual general meeting, where he didn't not support the Back Mac campaign. The UBC interpreted this as being in support of the movement, though not explicitly being allowed to say so, which he later confirmed. The day of the actual Back Mac protests, Mac ultimately threw in, and the UBC's headline for that issue was Mac Backs Mac. From the article, the UBC said as each busload came in, he kept saying, "That's wonderful." 11 buses came in total in support of the Back Mac protests, so presumably he said "that's wonderful" 11 times. Through the course of the campaign, they collected a lot of signatures, around 220,000 of them, which were delivered in boxes to the provincial government. These signatures came in from across the province. For example, over 8,000 of those signatures came from the Kootenays. In addition to these signatures, there was a march, some might even call it a trek, from Sunset Beach to the Vancouver courthouse. 3,500 people marched from Sunset Beach to the Vancouver courthouse, as well as those aforementioned 11 buses from across the province. Ultimately, as a result of this campaign, the province gave the university $370,000 in additional funding, though it should be noted that this additional funding wasn't used in consultation with the AMS or students at all, which they took issue to because they spent a fair bit of money on the campaign itself. And even despite the additional funding that they had raised, there were still fee and tuition increases anyway. So yeah, that's the back protests. Back to you in the studio.
In today's episode of the Vilest Rag, you heard from Julian Coyle Forst, our arts and culture editor, and Columnist Quyen Schroeder. The podcast is written and hosted by myself, Elena Massing, the Ubyssey's features editor. It was filmed and edited by Saumya Kamra. The music is by Alicia Chaudhry, and the graphics were designed by Ayla Cilliers. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.